Hi there, I'm Jane, and this is my chaotic sewing corner. In this video, I'm going to show you how I made a pair of side hoops. They're also referred to as panniers, which is a French term. I'm honestly so thankful that my year of French classes in college still is useful sometimes. Let's start off with some background information. If you don't know what side hoops / panniers are, this is what they look like. Some are without petticoats or gowns on top, but I also included some mantua gowns just to show how wide they can be. They're the precursor to the hoop skirts, cage skirts, and crinolines of the 19th century and later. My favorite thing about side hoops is that there's just such a variety of materials, sizes, shapes. I have a list of the materials I've found here. So we have reeds, baleen, also known as whalebone, metal wire, iron strips that are soldered together, leather, linen, silk. The shapes ranged from circular to rectangular to trapezoidal. I'm pretty sure trapezoidal is a word. And while panniers are pretty comfortable, I've found, they could also be sometimes inconvenient. Janet Arnold, who was a fashion historian, there's the word, she was a fashion historian. She died a few decades ago, but she did a ton of important work and published a few books that are just considered essential for a lot of historical customers today. She has this book that I have, that I got as a gift, purchased for me, called The Patterns of Fashion. It's number 5 in the series. The content, cut, construction, and context of bodies, stays, hoops, and rumps circa 1595 to 1795. So she tells a story in this book. I'll read it for you now and I'll put it up on the screen because I just thought it was hilarious. Dorothy Felton removed her hoop to enter a small cellar door and left it behind. This was used as evidence at her trial for burglary in 1737. Snow Hill. The prisoner Felton was my servant this time 12-month, and went away from me 11th of August last, about 3 o'clock in the morning, March 11. She got in at the cellar door under my dwelling house, and left her hoop petticoat upon the cellar stairs. Here it is, my lord. Then she came up into my chamber. I can't say I saw her, because 'twas dark, but I heard her pull out 3 drawers, from whence she took these things, which I found again in her lodgings. I swear they are mine. Here's the 2 silver salts, 2 silver cups, a black silk apron, etc., etc. So I'll be using the patterns and instructions from the book, The American Guide to 18th Century Dressmaking by Lauren Stowell and Abby Cox. I use this one a lot. I know, I've mentioned it before. I will link it in the description in case you're curious. It's a great book. They break everything down to instructions on how they would do it based on their research. I definitely do alternate between looking at the American Guide and Janet Arnold to really understand what I'm doing. I'll also link the page to purchase the Janet Arnold books in the description because I love those things so much. Okay, I need to stop rambling about these books and everything, so let's roll. Let's roll into these side hoops and just get them started. It's almost always the first step, ironing out the fabric. I didn't feel like including it in the footage though, because to me, watching someone iron is like watching paint dry. I decided to use some lightweight blue cotton shirting to keep myself cool while wearing gowns over this structure. This fabric is also pretty budget friendly. I'm marking out the pieces using the measurements from the American Duchess without a paper pattern because I like to live dangerously. And also, the clothes makers for women in the 18th century probably didn't really use paper patterns either. See, I'm very authentic. After the 2 main pieces are cut out, the pocket slit is also carefully cut out. Each side of the pocket slit is turned up 1/2 of an inch, pressed with my fingers, pinned in place, and then hemmed. The raw edge on the bottom of the pocket is also overlocked with a wide whip stitch before continuing on. The bottom of each hoop panel is then turned up about 1/4 of an inch and basted in place with some spare thread. This area marks the bottom of the third boning channel. Then, the boning channels are marked out, with the first channel right underneath the bottom of the pocket, and the second channel in between the bottom and the top ones. Then, the boning channels are sewn on from the right side using a running backstitch with some white Gutermann cotton thread. When I started this project, I did not have the 3/4 inch twill tape that the pattern calls for, but I really wanted to use up some of my sewing stash anyways. So I took some of the standard sort of double fold bias tape and widened it a little with some ironing, just kind of shifting the middle fold and making sure my boning would fit without any big struggles. It's important to keep the stitching very close to the edge, maybe 2 or 3 millimeters away. The boning will place some tension on these seams, so too close to the edge and they're likely to rip, but in order to keep the channel tape smooth and make sure the boning can fit easily, you don't want to stitch too close to the center either. Once all 3 boning channels are attached, one side of the hoop panel is basted and then hemmed over the ends of the boning channels to seal them closed. And as I go along, I'm going to remove those ugly red basting stitches. Now time for the ties. I decided to use some twill tape for the ties, but all I had was 1/2 inch wide twill tape. And each panel takes 6 ties, with the top 4 being shorter and stitched on by backstitching near the edge, folding over the rest of the tie, and then backstitching and hemming around the folded end in a kind of like a square. However, I'm only doing 3 ties on each panel at the moment for the side that's already been hemmed. The other side will be completed once the boning is inserted. The bottom 2 ties of each panel are about 3 times as long as the other ones. They're stitched on similarly, but instead of on one edge, the center is stitched down. I also folded over the ends of the ties that are not attached, just to quickly hem them with a few stitches and keep them from unraveling. After all that's done, the boning pieces are inserted into the open end of the boning channels. I originally planned on just using some heavy-duty zip ties for this, but the hoops were really sad with just those, and the zip ties couldn't hold enough tension to make them really hoopy. So I grabbed some flat 1/2 inch plastic boning I had lying around in my stash and inserted that underneath the zip ties. This actually ended up working really well. I would have loved to use some cane boning, which the pattern suggests, but I had a hard time finding it when I was gathering materials for this project. However, after I had already finished them, I realized that the online historical costuming shop, William Booth Draper, totally has cane boning for a very reasonable price. Ah well, maybe next time, I don't know. At least the zip ties I bought were really cheap as well. And after the boning is settled, the other side of the hoop panels are folded over, basted, and hemmed as well. To make the top of the pannier fit properly and have the right shape, the waist has to be pleated and finished. I just sort of eyeballed the pleat size and ended up with 4 knife pleats on the front section and 4 on the back section. I didn't make the pleats as deep as I normally would for a skirt or a gown, and that kind of made the back of the pleats only about half the size of the front. After I fiddled around with them for a bit until I was happy, I basted them in place within the top seam allowance with a large running back stitch. In my experience, basting pleats with some derivative of the back stitch is important because a running stitch will still let the pleats move around too much and it won't keep them stable. Then I took a generous length of white bias tape, my waist measurement halved plus extra for tying, and hemmed it onto the back side. After hemming that portion, the rest is flipped around to the front and also hemmed. All that's left to do is finish the edges of the waist tapes by folding them over to enclose the raw edge and hem them shut. Okay, now that you've seen the whole process of how I made these, which was shorter than I was expecting, I think it only ended up being about 6.5 hours of footage, which means it probably took me, I'd guess 10 hours, because sometimes I don't record everything, because then you have to edit everything. Anyways, we have the lovely Darla here, as I call her, who is you can't see it, but she doesn't have a head. She is my adjustable dress form friend companion. I thought about putting these on and showing you, but I'm tired. I've been making my sack gown, which means I've had to do about 6 fittings in all of my 18th century undergarments and get-ups, and putting it on and taking it off constantly is kind of exhausting, sometimes multiple times per day. But Darla has volunteered. Basically, that's the front. Don't mind my sack gown, you'll see that later. This is from the back. So they are pretty springy. If you see, there's tension here and everything. Basically, you create the tension by tying the 2 boning channel ties together like this so that it braces against the hip and it keeps it, out there. It's giving you the structure you want. Yeah, I do get tangled in it pretty frequently, trying to put it on and take it off by myself. Sometimes my fiance has to help me, but I found that just untying the top and untying the bottom part down here is kind of the best way to do it. The bottom ties are interesting. They're basically just to keep them from shifting around too much. They're not tied very tightly. You want enough that you can still walk easily. So yeah, this is how they turned out. They're nice and light. I haven't had any problems with them collapsing yet or anything. I've made a petticoat out of taffeta, silk taffeta, that I found on eBay for a very, honestly, suspiciously cheap price that I will be showing you in the next video. But I've, had that and the unfinished sack gown on top, and it's honestly been working great. There hasn't been any collapsing. Obviously, if you were to wear layers and layers of heavy wool petticoats or something for some reason, they would probably squish a little bit, but I haven't had that happen yet. I think if they started to lose some of their bounce, I could gently iron on a very low setting the plastic in the zip ties and plastic boning in the boning cases and the boning channels. I don't know why I said boning cases, it's the boning channels. And it would sort of make it a little bit springier. So that's what I think. That's how it turned out. You can see that there's a pocket slit. I do need to make pockets at some point, but that's going to be a very embroidery heavy project, so I've been procrastinating that. And also I want to have the actual gown done before I do pockets, because pockets are like an accessory, but I want to have the full gown. I don't know why I'm so hyper-focused on this, but I am. Thank you, ADHD. I appreciate it. So they're not like the largest ones. They're pretty modest. I could probably fit through a doorway without too much trouble. So that's nice. While I think the 3-yard wide hoop skirt is very interesting and I would love to try one on, I don't think I would wear it very often. Just the thought of those women in court having to sidestep through doorways gets me every time. Honestly, it's so funny to me. Thank you, Darla. We appreciate you. You can sort of slide on over to your corner. They turned out really well. I'm very happy with them. I will probably use them for a long time. I might make another pair with linen at some point, but I'm not too worried about it right now. I think cane or hoop steel might have been able to handle more skirts or heavier skirts. I think it'll be fine if it's only a couple layers and it's something like linen, cotton, silk, no problem. I think these panniers will work out great. If you had a good time in this video watching me sew, do my thing, little chill video to have on in the background or whatever, did you know that you can like and comment and subscribe and ring that little bell down there? I know, I just found out like yesterday. Or if you want to show a little extra appreciation and help me afford the yards and yards of silk taffeta I feel like I need to make these gowns and do these projects, then there is a Ko-fi link in my description. Wait, is it Ko-fi or coffee? I've heard it both ways. I keep saying Ko-fi. What if it's not Ko-fi and I've just been embarrassing myself this whole time? If you think I'm wrong, just tell me in the comments and it's fine. So I've been trying to upload on the 3rd Friday of every month, but I think I'm gonna shift that a bit to the 1st Friday of every month. My current plan in order to shift that schedule is to I'll be releasing this video on the 3rd Friday like I usually have, and then my next video will, I'm probably gonna regret this, but it's gonna be on the 1st Friday, so in like 2 weeks after this is uploaded and released and everything. So this one's gonna be a little short time in between uploads, but I probably won't be able to maintain a video every 2 weeks because a lot of my projects take anywhere from 10 to 40 hours to hand sew because I refuse to use my sewing machine. And then the editing process does end up taking me a little while as well, and I'm doing this all by myself, although my fiance sometimes, straps me into things and takes photos of me wearing things for thumbnails and whatnot, so he's really nice. Next up on the docket, I have my 18th century petticoat, which is behind me, but it's rumpled in a pile, and if you want to see it on a human being or even Darla, you're gonna have to watch that next video with the bell and the subscribe and whatever. And after the petticoat, I have the highly anticipated robe à la francaise. Thank you, French class. Which is that reddish pile behind me. And if you want to see that unrumpled and hopefully finished, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer for that one because that's going to take me longer. It's taking me so long. There's so many fittings. Please send help. After those 2 videos, I don't know what's next. It'll be a surprise for you and me both. I haven't decided if I want to continue my 18th century obsession or if I want to circle back to Elizabethan stuff. I don't know yet. The Elizabethan does sound very tempting though, because I do have fabric and a pair of bodies that are almost done and stuff for a French farthingale to do a full 16th century late Elizabethan royal outfit, which is just, I love the silhouette. It's so silly. I would love to wear it. That is my current plan. If any of that sounds tempting to you, again, come back, watch me again, or don't. I won't be offended. It's okay. I will see you next time, hopefully. So thanks. Bye.